All right, everyone, it is time for Snow Search again. I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci at the Press of Atlantic City. Joined with me is meteorologist Sean Sublette at the Richmond Times Dispatch. Sean, this is kind of just reminding me of a lot of wasted cold air over the next week to 2 weeks. What do you think?
No, that's absolutely correct. I mean, we've got some awfully, awfully cold air coming in right before Christmas, and it's going to stick around for a little while. But then it's a question of, is there going to be enough of a storm around to interact with the cold air? I mean,
Yeah.
the very cold air has been a long time in coming, and it's here. And of course, we've got this first system to get through now later this week, but it doesn't look like it's going to be as much for areas east of the mountains,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And
Mhm.
just real quick, everybody, about snow search. We're searching for winter cold and storms. It's kind of a longer range forecast. We're not looking so much at this week. We're looking at next week, which is the week of Christmas. Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy Hanukkah to you as
Mhm.
well. We're looking at some general trends here across the area. And when we look at our general trends, we want to look at our winter indexes. So we've talked about these before. It's this word soup that we have going on, the NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation. Um, all you need to know is it's neutral and going to be neutral through the first of the month. No real strong storm or cold signal. The Arctic Oscillation, the AO, that is way negative, and it's been negative for a while. And that
Yes.
means cold air outbreaks and big storms, but it's not always, snow and big storms. We just had one last week that was a pretty significant. I'll say it was a good coastal storm,
Yeah.
but we didn't get any snow with it. And in the cold, we're going to get it now as we go into Christmas weekend. And then the last one, the PNA, the Pacific North Atlantic Index, that is going positive. And when it goes positive, below average temperatures in the eastern US. And again, we are looking for below average temperatures starting right around Christmas Eve and then going into most of that holiday week next week. So let's
Yeah.
take a look at our chances for a white Christmas, Sean. Here, we showed this last week. Unless you're living in the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina, Virginia, kind of hard to come by, right, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, you really got to get up there a bit in elevation. Shenandoah Valley, Roanoke, these locations don't have a very good chance either. You need to get into the true Western Highlands or deep Southwestern Virginia to get a good chance here in the Commonwealth. A little better chance in interior parts of Pennsylvania. But as you and I were talking about before we hit record, the chances just don't look good, despite how big a storm is coming into the eastern
Yeah.
United States later this week.
Yeah, and we'll show you the future cast here. So this is Thursday at 3 o'clock, Sean. Take it away.
Look at the map at 3 o'clock. A lot of places just have rain. That's the green and the dark green on the map. Then you move it forward a bit toward 8 o'clock on Friday morning. Blues and whites are where all the snow is going to be. And that's much farther westward, basically west of the Appalachians. So, in central Pennsylvania to the New Jersey shore, south into North Carolina, it's mostly going to be rain. There will be a little bit of mix into the mountains of Virginia and North Carolina, but that's really not going to be the dominant precipitation. Little burst of snow possible, goes on for a couple of hours, and then that's it. It just kind of pulls away on Friday night, and then we get just some big league cold coming in. So when we look at the overall map for the 23rd and 24th, it's primarily rain for South Jersey through DC, Richmond. Then you start to see more of a mix inland from Philly back up to Carlisle and Harrisburg, a little bit more of a mix, let's say, for the Shenandoah Valley down to the Roanoke Valley and west of the Triad in North Carolina. But, a good snow that's really going to be in the true higher terrain of the Appalachians. But I think one of the things we want to focus in on, though, Joe, and I'll toss it back over to you, is just how cold it's going to be in the wake of this thing.
Yeah, and we could be talking potentially about what we like to call a flash freeze, where
Hmm.
the roads are wet and then it gets below freezing. Now it's going to depend on the timing. You were saying before, Sean. If the front passes Friday morning and we drop to 32 degrees, well, you got the sunshine out, you got the wind blowing, and then not really much in the way of freezing because there's not much liquid around. So hopefully that's the case. And one more thing too, when we say mix in those pink areas, a lot of it's going to be rain going to a little bit of snow there at the end potentially. We take a look at our longer range pattern because remember, we are talking about next week here in our snow search. And you see a couple of low pressure systems flying their way through the area. You see one to 26 that's generally up in Canada. Now, this is in the upper levels. This doesn't necessarily mean what's happening at the surface. But what we are noticing is that as we get into the middle part of next week, there is going to be a low pressure system that gets cut off from the rest of that flow. So you see those two L's, one's over in Quebec, the other one's really hiding at the top of your screen there in Western Canada. But then you see this low that goes into the deep south. Well, that one is something worth watching for the end of next week here. More than likely, Sean, I think we're talking about what my old weather colleague Brad Miller used to say, a sou'easter, where instead of going off the going up the northeast, it kind of goes off the southeastern coast and stays there. But it's still something worth watching as the jet stream generally stays in a west to east pattern for the end of the week. That zonal flow, that usually means some more milder air, and we will be moderating at the end of next week. But the cold does come for Christmas as we start the week. And to quote Elvis Presley, he said, "I'll have a blue Christmas." Now, he said without you. I think he meant without the warm air, because we are talking about temperatures on Christmas Day likely going to be our coldest since the year 2000. And that's true from South Jersey all the way into North Carolina here. Temperatures, for the most part, not getting above freezing in many spots here. And if you're in, or near those mountains or the elevated areas, might not get out of the teens here on Christmas Day. So, Sean, what I'll do is I'll toss it back over to you, and let's just talk about two things we're watching out for next week.
Yeah, as you alluded to before, there's going to be that much weaker system that anchors just to the south of the middle Atlantic, south of Virginia. So, a lot of times, these are the kinds of things that can sneak in and put down an inch or two of snow with about 24 or 36 hours notice. I mean, there's been a lot of buzz about this storm that's coming this weekend or later this week, but these are the kinds of things you also have to keep an eye on. So we don't think the chances are fantastic, but we do think there is another chance of this little weaker storm being down in the southern branch of the jet stream Boxing Day or the 27th. And the cold air is certainly going to be in place. Cold air isn't going to be an issue. It's a question of whether or not the moisture could come in from the storm. So we don't think there's a fabulous chance, but there is at least a legitimate chance to get some snow anywhere from Western Carolina through the middle Atlantic and perhaps even into Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. So this is the second thing to keep in the back of your mind. So don't be surprised. We don't think it's a done deal by any stretch of the imagination, but it's certainly something to keep in the back of your mind after you're done with the presents on Christmas Day and the like. Right, Joe?
Yeah, that's it. So, like we said, we're not saying it's definitely going to snow. More than likely, it'll probably just be dry, but just something to keep an eye on. And in that darker blue area, Richmond, Greensboro, Hickory, we did that because it looks like if we're going to get something, that's kind of that sweet spot of being close enough to the storm, but also cold enough as well. So again, only 30% risk. We're not trying to say that this is an incredible storm. Now, going from the 28th to the 30th, that's the better potential for something, especially if you're in North Carolina or Virginia. But the track is key here. And what's going to happen is you're going to see that main low and then two smaller low pressure systems work its way into, the open Atlantic. So what does that mean? Well, anywhere where you see those two smaller L's, that's where that storm track could be. If that low pressure system, that smaller low you see closer in North Carolina, if that's the track, that's more of your classic kind of nor'easter where, yes, I-95 corridor, maybe even a little closer to the coast, would see some snow here because there still will be cold air available. This storm will help knock some of that cold air out afterwards. But the point is, more than likely, this storm's going to stay in the southeastern United States, probably going to be all rain. Average highs in places like Charleston, South Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, they're in the 50s. It's very hard to snow anyway. And if that low pressure goes actually, further to the southeast, like you see that little low that's kind of on the bottom right corner of your screen, we could be dry with the exceptions of some parts of the deep south that would be seeing some rain. So just to recap that real quick, where you see those lows, those three L's, that's kind of our range for where the track of the storm could be. Further northwest it goes, that's where we talk about that classic nor'eastern pattern. We're not favoring that, but that's in the realm of possibility. More than likely, this stays off the southeastern coast and actually moves a little more east rather than north. And then you're just talking about rain here for North Carolina, maybe Norfolk, Virginia, and that's it. So, Sean, wrap it up here for us with our recap for the week of December 25th.
Right. So once we get past this event here, a couple days before Christmas, we have the coldest Christmas in about 20 or 22 years for a lot of the middle Atlantic states. And then two more systems that are generally weaker, but ironically enough, might have slightly better chances when you combine them all together to get some snow falling from the sky. One on the 26th, 27th, then a break, and then another one 28th through 30th. Also, more likely to see a mix there. And importantly, Joe, as we kind of pointed out at the beginning of this, after we get past the 30th, the cold air retreats for a while. And it does look like it turns milder again right around the first of the year. So I don't want to say these are the only chances, but this is going to be, you know, what happens here in the next 6 or 7 days really is going to be, I think, our best chance for a while to get
Yeah.
some snow before the whole
Yeah.
weather pattern turns again, not balmy, but milder or too warm at least to produce any legitimate snow.
Yeah, and we were saying it in our Across the Sky podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you're
Mhm.
listening here. But we were saying when we talked to Judah Cohen, signs are for an earlier winter, but
Yeah.
that wasn't even a definite, but an earlier winter because there's not too much of a strong signal for sustained cold and sustained snow
Yeah.
throughout the winter of 22 and 23. So we'll wrap it up with our snow search there. But Sean, what is the one thing you've been searching for the past week, weather or otherwise?
I've been searching for one final gift.
Okay.
I've got one more thing on the list, then I am done. Everything other than that is wrapped, but I've got one more thing to get a hold of, and sometimes it's easier to get things than others. I understand you've had a little trouble, right?
Well, yeah, my thing I'm searching for is Amazon Prime. That's actually
Yeah.
Prime because I'm going to the app and, like, for example, I was buying a shirt for someone and it says Amazon Prime with the logo. They're like, okay, cool, we'll be here in 2 days. Well, it says it's not available till December 30th. And I'm like, what? I said, that's crazy. And then I looked at some other things on Amazon. They were doing the same thing where it wouldn't arrive well after Christmas. So I'm like, look, listen, you can say that it's not around to the 30th. Just don't tease me and say that it's Amazon Prime. I mean, I've been noticing this too, even before Christmas, where Prime isn't really 2 day, fast and free shipping anymore. So I'm not sure what's going on there, Sean, but that's what I'm searching for over the past week. And it'll probably be
I,
my
I
search for the
understand.
next week too.
I understand that entirely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had better luck than you so far this season, but we'll see how it goes. With
Yeah. Eh,
one more thing to come in.
One more thing to come. Hopefully that works for you, Sean. I'm actually pretty good with presents overall. I'm fine, but that was just the one thing that bugged me. So anyway, that is our snow search for the week of Christmas here. We did talk a little bit about a lake week storm. I'll be back with you next Tuesday. Sean is taking his holiday break, much deserved, Sean, as we wrap up another year here with Lee Enterprises. And then the two of us will be back with you probably on, I'm looking at my calendar here, probably the 3rd, Tuesday.
Sounds
the
about
3rd.
right.
Yeah. These Sunday holidays, switching things up a little bit. So we'll be back with you, everybody.
And also,
Yeah.
Joe, you mentioned it before. Remind everybody, subscribe to our Across the Sky podcast if you don't already. We've had some fabulous guests here the last 2 or 3 weeks. And we're doing some cool year-end stuff, first of the year stuff coming up as well. So be sure and you can get in all the podcast things across the sky. You can see all of our pretty faces there on the screen.
That's it. Especially maybe we're the most pretty faces on the screen. What do you think, Sean?
I've been prettier.
Okay. We're good. Anyway, everybody, happy holidays. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks
Happy
for
holidays,
watching
everyone.
Snow Surge.